Hey, I'm Christa.
Hey, I'm Micah. And we are bad people with good things to say.
This is a podcast that seeks to challenge black and white thinking
And wrestle through the grey.
to risk evolving through conversation.
Because there's always more to learn.
Today we're back. This is technically our first episode.
Yes.
Actually talking about some topical points
Things,
of conversation.
specific things. Yeah.
Yes. And today Mike has brought a topic and done some research, and I'll let you go from there.
I'm excited to get into it.
Yes.
So Chris,
Yes.
what do you know about cults?
Oh gosh.
What
cults.
comes to your mind
Right.
when you hear the word cult?
I mean, really, honestly, the first thing is like, don't drink the Kool-Aid, like that kind of vibe. Like
Yeah.
when you go into a group and you start, hearing some things, and then they offer you some things, and then you're like, wait, what is this? And then have I been brainwashed into thinking something that isn't really my own thoughts? Like that kind of vibe. Like,
Yeah.
And then obviously, like I honestly think of like the Manson family. Like that's what I think of, maybe. And just like
I only know a little bit of the man. Like, was that the one that ended in kind of murder?
Yes.
Which is
not great.
hectic.
I mean, there's like that movie, I think, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That, profiled.
Is that their story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sort of like it's a bit of a twist because it's not, I mean, parts of it were accurate. And then I think the ending, they kind of got revenge on like the bad guy. I think. I watched it a long time ago. But,
okay. Because the Mansons were in like the 70s.
Yes.
Yes.
And he basically like.
Was he an artist or?
Yeah, I think like, again, really charismatic leader.
Okay.
And he had, I think it was like the Manson family, like Charles Manson, serial killer.
Yeah.
And then, but yeah, anyways, that's sort of what I think of is like a group leader.
So serial killer. But because I always get him because then there's that artist, right? Who
Marilyn Manson. Yes.
So I always,
well, I mean, he's called, I believe.
association.
Yes. I think he chose that name because of, his
some cult.
Wanting the darkness.
Yeah. Cult influence there.
Yeah.
But the Kool-Aid reference.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's like,
tell me.
From Jonestown.
Yes.
Right. They had to, if I'm correct, from the book Cultish here by Amanda Montell. It's really good. I would recommend anyone to read this if you want to know a bit more about cults. But she goes into that story of the Kool-Aid and how it's been sort of like misrepresented over the years.
Yep.
And how people who are actually involved in Jonestown like hate that saying because it's I guess it sort of trivializes and has made a joke of something that was like really serious there. Yeah. But the Kool-Aid,
is that not, it was not poisoned or laced with like
I think it was it was some sort of
like
poison.
That's how they committed mass suicide, right?
They were all given that drink. But I think the thing that maybe is a misconception is that a lot of people were like at that point forced. They weren't just
there was coercion and there was possibly not all the information given to them about what they were really doing and being involved in.
Yeah, and Jim Jones also had sort of a bit of a militia at that point. So he did have people around the compound like with weapons. Right. So people were sort of like forced to.
Yes, it wasn't like their choice. So, as you can tell, we're starting season 3 super light and airy and not at all with bad topics that might make you feel some things. So welcome.
Yeah, this is just something I've always been like fascinated by cults.
Yes.
But I think what's interesting about them and what this book points out is that they are a lot more sort of I guess common than we think, and often hide in plain sight because they are to do with like social dynamics, and those are never going to go away,
right.
So we'll always have, I think, sort of cults and cultish behavior to contend with, and that's because it often involves like like power, power dynamics, and coercion, manipulation, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. So like first question, like then what are cults? Like what is a cult, maybe by definition or based on like the research? Like how would we, how do we define that?
What is a cult?
Yeah.
That's such a good question. I can't give like a definitive answer, but the answer that I am giving is from this book. And she says that there's no one succinct academic definition of what a cult is, but Stephen Kent, a sociology professor at the University of Alberta, says that cult has typically been applied to groups that have some degree of supernatural beliefs.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Though that isn't always the case.
Okay.
And I would add to that they might have like metaphysical or spiritual beliefs.
Can we even qualify it and say like special knowledge kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I guess, it could be about any sort of thing.
Sure.
Someone has special knowledge, right? Of like, this is how you like become successful in business.
Right. Or get the healing that you need.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Like this is how you lose the pounds.
Right.
And it might, like, a cultist group or leader might also just propose a like really specific ideology, worldview or lifestyle.
Okay.
Like I think that can kind of, that's the breadth of it.
Cool.
But yeah, they're undeniably just a social thing and revolve around our need for like community, I guess, and belonging.
Like this is prevalent. This isn't something that's happened like 100 years ago or 50 and like we're one and done. It's like, no. These are present day things that we contend with.
Totally.
Yes.
And so I think, because I'm using a lot of quotes from this book because I think it's a book I've read a couple times, and she does a really good job of highlighting the fact that language is one of the big indicators of like cult behavior, but also there's like so much stuff out there. I've watched so many documentaries.
Yes.
And nerded out on this just because it does really fascinate me with like why we get into these kinds of dynamics with other people and why certain people just like, I don't know, feel the need to control and coerce others into doing things or into being subject, I guess, to their power and dominance. I don't know.
That's interesting because it's group behavior, right? Like you need somebody typically like that's a leader, and then there are followers, right? So I mean, groups exist everywhere.
Totally.
So one of my favorite like running brands right now, Satisfy Running, is all about one of their clothing things is like running cult member or something, right? Like there's High Rocks, there's like
we're always forming groups and crafting specific language around
well, and funny enough,
certain ideas.
I think we talked about this too before, was this idea that people can kind of like say, well, oh, that's a cult. I don't want to be a part of that. Like I think some people, funny enough, like will kind of go like, I don't want to be in High Rocks because like that's a fucking cult. Like these people are nuts and so weird, and they're all like doing things a certain type of way. And it's kind of like a put down a little, right?
Yeah, and she brings that up in the book too, saying that cult has often been used to just describe groups we don't like.
Right.
So it can be interesting to just sift through like, actually, no, what is a legit...
Yes. Like, okay, yeah. What's the difference?
A harmful cult?
Yes. What's the difference between then, I guess you would say like an ethical...
Like a club.
An ethical group and a non-ethical group? Like, how would you define that?
That is a great question. And I think it can be pretty gray. But there are some telltale signs, I think, for more like harmful groups that scholars and experts have agreed can kind of like, I guess, advertise cult behavior a little bit.
Right.
Which include, but aren't limited to, quote, a power imbalance built on members' devotion, hero worship, and absolute trust.
Okay.
Which frequently facilitates abuse on the part of unaccountable leaders, that absolute trust piece.
Right. Like no governance.
Yeah.
Right?
Just like there's a relationship of absolute trust from the followers in the leader.
Yeah.
And the leader can then, because he or she has that trust, can then basically make all the rules. Right.
And nobody is ever
parameters.
Like checking the human that is the leader of this thing, kind of, and going like, because every human left to their own, I think, right? You know, we all have these bad tendencies.
Egos.
Yes.
We all kind of, and that's what I think was cool for us, because we've always been interested like in our discussions of like, where are those things in us? And so I think it's just interesting to see where some of these tendencies we maybe could all have go to extreme lengths, and whether they get there intentionally or whether this is just like unchecked power that eventually goes real bad, which I think it is more often than not.
But
The glue that keeps this trust intact is members' belief that their leaders have a rare access to transcendent wisdom, which allows them to exercise control over their systems of rewards and punishments, both here on earth and in the afterlife. End quote.
Right. That is usually a part of it. Is
Right.
Yes. Okay. That's interesting.
So Stephen Hassan, who we're going to kind of talk about a little bit, but he's a mental health counselor who's studied cults for like about 40 years.
Right.
And he's had he's helped numerous people like come out of cults and then sort of heal in the aftermath of exiting a really high control system.
Right. Ooh, on that note, there's a great podcast. Trevor Noah, I think we all love his podcast, but he interviewed Stephen Hassan.
He
right?
did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a great episode.
Yeah.
There's many podcasts I could recommend that get into cult behavior from a lot of people who exited and were now like,
speaking from experience,
we
which
woke
is a
up
big
and
thing.
we want to help people sort of like be able to see red flags and not get into situations that we were in.
Okay.
And a lot of those podcasts I've loved to listen to.
Yes,
I
you've
just
done
find them
good
so
research.
fascinating.
Yeah, totally.
But he says, Hassan says that the groups toward the destructive end of the cult kind of spectrum use 3 kinds of deception. So omission of what you need to know, distortion to make whatever they're saying more acceptable, and outright lies.
Right. Okay. So that's interesting, the omission piece, right? Because that really creates a dynamic of like infantilization, I guess. Or just keeping the followers dumber than the leader, just with withholding information, just basic things.
And that's where it can get murky because you don't know if someone's lying to you or not, you know, like, and that is that comes with sort of like relational back and forth, getting to know someone, who they are. And even then, sometimes people get into long-term relationships with people they think they know who are.
Well, and like it's a murky, that's the gray area of, is a lie of omission truly a lie? Which I would say, yes, it is. Like you should be freely giving information.
Right.
So that the other person can take or leave, you know, and go like, oh, I'm actually being trusted enough to have like the whole picture to make the decision for myself.
Totally.
Right. Yeah.
So I think why it can be easy for groups to go that route of being lied to is because, say, let's use the dynamic I'm most familiar with, which is pastor in a congregation.
Sure. Yeah.
That pastor, maybe you come to a church, you see the pastor speaking on the stage, and that's kind of your first impression, right, of like who this person is, what they're saying. But that can be so curated, and
well, it is. It's impossible for it not to be.
Right. And so like I grew up in small town churches where like we associated with the pastor like all the time. Like you'd be walking into church and you might bump into him and then be like, hey, and you'd have a conversation. Often we would go to the pastor's place for lunch after church, like at the end of the service or whatever, and you would be like in relationship, you know. And then I moved to a different dynamic where it was like mega church size, so you're not having that same interaction with pastors as I was in my like small hometown. So obviously you kind of just take what you get and have to trust that. And I don't know. I think that can be,
it's interesting,
really work against you sometimes.
Yeah. Cause like for me, that brings to mind that they should have it should be like, for me, it's just bringing, what we're saying is like that people are on these platforms and maybe they're not sharing everything about their personal life. But what I even was thinking is like, they're not even sharing sometimes the full breadth of knowledge that they have about the topic that they're speaking on.
100%.
And something that I've found challenging over the past few years is just even like when we're talking about this pastor congregant dynamic is like that there is actual multiple views on, let's say, the Bible, right? That, you know, hugely knowledgeable scholars about like with regards to the Bible actually don't agree, like all of them don't agree that it's inerrant or that it was written by certain authors or that it I don't know, like things like
there
that.
are many perspectives.
Exactly, right? Or even that there were female leaders that were literally written out of the Bible, right? And that the pastors aren't necessary, or even like the doctrine of hell. Like that is something that is definitely people do not agree on.
Yeah.
And that is always tricky for me, is that the pastor is then withholding the scholarly knowledge around these topics and just really keeping it kind of like a dumbed down version, instead of saying like, you need to, like, this is my perspective, let's say, on hell, but actually there's a completely different perspective out there. Even if the church like governance is really wants to amplify that hell is a real thing, like there is like a responsibility of that person to I think, to make sure their congregation is well versed in like the whole understanding of that there's an opposing view. And that's maybe what that's making me think of right now, is that there's like a withholding of all information, but really we're just going to keep tamping down on the same point and go like, no, this is the right way, and get like really into the weeds. I don't know. Is that sort of what you're talking about? Yeah,
kind of. That's one form of, I considered that sort of like omission.
Like withholding.
Because then you do like in our church we were encouraged to then do like you do more study, right? You like go to college, and that's how you get these broader views, which are behind a paywall. And if you have sort of questions about theology, you at some point you're going to come up against like academia and or get led into academic territory, and I get that you need, like, for group cohesion, you need sort of like simple goals and stories, and like Noah Harari,
cohesion.
Yuval kind of points that out in a couple of his books. Like truth and like order are always sort of in tension. And so I get that. But it is interesting. I think it's just more complex in like charismatic and evangelical circles, where people are sort of taught to like self-interpret the Bible and to like listen to the Holy Spirit and what's he revealing to you. And there would be a lot of pastors in that circle that have not even done seminary or gone to higher education themselves because of that kind of like approach to reading the Bible, where you just, your own interpretation has authority, and you can then like listen to other preachers, and that can be your education, and your qualifications for becoming a pastor are not necessarily, they don't need to be based necessarily in your academic background.
Which is like, I think we've referenced this in our first episode, like the intro, is that this is kind of, I think you would say is like the dummy, what do you call that? Like, what are those books called again? Like
cults for dummies.
Yeah, exactly. Like what we're really
for dummies. Those books.
Yeah, what we're really endeavoring to do here is to give you guys some basic verbiage and understanding around these topics, so that like we have, there's obviously we're not scholar. I mean, you are in that world a little bit more.
Beginning.
Yeah, exactly. But like, here is some information that it's not just our feelings about cults. Like, these are some like researched, and this is hopefully like a little bit of a guidepost to go like, hey, if you want to know more specifics, like you can actually know a lot about this topic.
And I think I've done the research and the taken the time to listen to so many stories and read so many books on this topic is because it is rooted a bit in some of my own experience. So that's kind of where this comes from.
Cool.
Distortion, just like twisting things people already maybe believe in or subscribe to, and then putting a spin on it in a way that slowly their thinking is molded a certain way, and then outright lies, which you never really know until the truth comes out or something's revealed. And
which that would be an easier one, like at some point those, like a Ponzi scheme or something, like that's gonna fall apart, but it's almost like, I mean, those ones are just more blatant, and you can kind of go like, oh yeah, this is what that was. But the other ones I think are more dangerous, because you're just slowly being deceived over time, and you maybe would never really truly see the truth.
And so that's one of the things that Stephen Hassan's, we were going to go through. Maybe he's got a tool called the BITE model, which is like a tool for sort of just understanding how authoritarian control works. And one of those pieces to controlling a group or whatever is through omission, sort of like leaving out vital information.
Right.
So often, sometimes that's like building this mistrust in like the media or what the media has to say.
Right.
So you're cutting off a certain like potentially critical view of your organization or your, I don't know, church.
Yeah.
And by doing that, not allowing or just building sort of an evil aura around creating this sort of us versus them dynamic with your congregants, who then will kind of like just automatically mistrust or not even read anything the media says because they believe it's all
like any criticism being vilified, right? Yeah. Okay. That's
and not even criticism, just like the media itself, building them as like an untrustworthy entity. Like they're out to attack us. They just want to say negative things. They don't really know because they've just got the outside perspective, and we're doing what we're doing in here is like the Lord's
if they
work.
Only knew. Right.
Yeah. If they only knew. They just need to come to church and like see what we're really about. And, that is kind of how a mission works. But should we go through that a little bit?
The bite model?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I think it's really helpful, and I've really appreciated the work that Stephen Hassan does. So he's just saying,
this you can find on his website. He's got a lot of free resources, right?
All his resources are free, which is amazing. He's been pretty open about that the work he does, he wants to make it available for free because, it can be really bad. Yeah. if you get involved in
and even as
a very high control group.
Yeah, and even as you're sort of contemplating what authoritarian control looks like or regime or whatever, I know we're sort of, a lot of people are worried that that's where our world is currently headed. Yep. Or, I mean, there's definitely that exists in the world. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he has written a book called The Cult of Trump, and he goes into sort of how, which is interesting. Good. So BITE stands for behaviour, information, thought, and emotional control. So often in groups that are on the more unethical end of the spectrum, this is what they will be in different ways, and this is like not the breadth of everything they might be employing, but this often shows up, these kinds of controls. So behavior is the cult leader or the person in charge might be wanting to regulate people's like physical reality. I'll pick a few because there's so much here, and you guys can check it out on your own time if you want to. But when and how and with whom the member has sex. So sex is often controlled. Right. Types of like clothing and hairstyles, like how you dress, even regulating diet, manipulation and deprivation of sleep. That's a big one because if you're not sleeping, you're tired and you're less able to think critically. This is and that can happen in many ways. The deprivation of sleep. Financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence. So you're sort of dependent on an entity, or restricting leisure, entertainment, vacation time, and a lot of your time is just monopolized by the group or the organization or the thing. Okay. Or
and
the
this is all under the behavior. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. He's got like 25 points of behaviors that will be
even in
controlled.
Those first few, you kind of in the one sense you're like, oh, that sounds crazy. And then as I'm thinking about that further, I'm like, wait a second. Okay, I feel like I've been in places like that.
100%. Okay. Yes. And then information control is, number one is kind of like this deception piece where you deliberately withhold information and distort things to make them seem more acceptable, and systematic kind of like lies to cult members or congregants or whatever. And there's, number two is minimizing or discouraging access to non-cult sources or information, including internet, TV, radio, books, articles, newspapers, critical information, former members who maybe are no longer part of it.
Sure.
Yep. And keeping members busy so they don't have time to think and investigate.
Wow. Okay.
Control through cell phone with like texting calls, internet tracking. That's pretty extreme, but yeah, I know that's happened to many people. And then compartmentalizing information into outsider versus insider doctrines. So this is the kind of like us versus them thing.
Yeah, which is super effective.
Yeah, and encouraging spying on other members. That sounds really sort of like sketchy and like that word spying. But I would say that happens just through like, I mean, this is not to say all Christian churches are cults, but one way that can sort of be outworked in the Christian dynamic is just like the idea of sort of like keeping each other accountable and pastoral care and like really you're sort of keeping tabs on people to see if they're
it's funny,
see if they're living the godly way.
Well, again, like I can quickly just be like, oh, that's crazy. And then again, I'm like, oh, shit. Like there's examples in my own life that I would have outed somebody, like not necessarily in that sense, but in like some way of like, well, you know, they're a leader and this is what's going on in their personal life. And I feel like I need to bring this to like, that's such garbage. Wow.
Especially when it can't come to like sexual activity too, or sexual realm is just like, there's a very specific way of that you are sexually okay. And anything that deviates from that is like, we bring that to light, or we talk about that, or we get.
Well, I remember like upon leaving my context as a leader in a church or whatever, and literally not repenting in the sense of like needing to be right before God, but going to a person and apologizing to them because I, as a leader, had chastised them and told them they could not be on a platform based on what I perceived to be their sexual what was going on with them sexually based on a photograph.
Oh, okay.
Like that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And thank God like I could apologize and be like, that's so wrong. But like, and again, was encouraged by leadership to do that, like woman to woman kind of thing. And like, now I just shudder and I'm like, thank God I'm not a part of that.
Things, right?
But like that's, okay, so that's like, again, easy to sort of go like that's out there, but nope, maybe that's going on. And interesting.
More prevalent than we would.
Totally.
That's all part of information control.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so congregants or cult members are then become part of the system where like you police each other.
Yes, right.
Yeah. And you
under the guise
leader
of like
have to do all the work.
Well, funny because each of these things is under the guise of like, this is best for I'm doing what's right, what's best for you,
right,
and what's best for me,
right.
Okay.
So this last one under information control is unethical use of confession, which is like information about sins used to disrupt or dissolve identity boundaries. Withholding forgiveness or absolution, manipulation of memory, possible false memories, just like it's
that gets pretty hard,
right?
Wow,
and then thought control. Requiring members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth.
Right.
So, I think this will all fall under sort of like indoctrination, which happens over time. It's not like you're brainwashed in a second. Like these are things sort of you buy into.
Right. That
then slowly get warped and guided in a certain direction that doesn't seem unreasonable. You're like, oh yeah, that's sort of that's the way we understand this word in this context.
Right.
This is what sin means. This is what
Interesting.
So part of that is thought control is changing a person's name and identity. Use of loaded language and cliches which constrict knowledge or stop critical thoughts and reduce complexities into platitudinous buzzwords.
Which that's funny because I think in that language piece, there's so much like, just because this is an easy thing to reference, but like Christianese, like these sort of like buzzword that like in the spirit, or, you know, I'm feeling like
on
convicted.
my heart.
Yes.
Convicted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
So many words I could think about. And I mean, do you know much about like what a thought ending cliche is?
Well, yes. Only in the sense that, I mean, I'm not sure that I could give you might have, maybe you can give us a good example of one.
I can. Yeah.
Do that. Yeah. Because it's so great.
Yeah. I remember when this book was the first thing I read that made me kind of view my experience in a mega church differently and think this makes so much sense.
Right.
And yeah, so one of those terms that I learned was the thought ending cliche, which is like little just sort of phrases that get used a lot to sort of like stop a thinking process from continuing. Right. And potentially getting into like critical territory or uncomfortable territory or just more complex territory.
Okay. Yeah.
So one that would get tossed around a lot in our context, the context I was in, was offense is a choice.
Oh, okay.
So if you think about that, like saying offense is a choice sounds kind of on the surface true. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I know. I'm the one who is in control of my emotions, and I can choose to be offended or I can choose not to.
Sure. Yeah.
But what it did was actually work to kind of cause you to suppress any disappointed feelings or any actual like hurt or maybe feelings of betrayal or disappointment with another person, because you would be like, oh, that's my problem. I'm choosing to be offended at this. So therefore I'm not going to. And so you can just think about, what about the times when that's warranted, when you need to have a conversation with someone because they maybe have done something.
Well, right, because you say that to me, like offense is a choice, which again, like outside of that context, I'm like, okay, right. So first I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I'm like, right, okay, it is a choice, but it's also like the subtext there is like that it's a choice, but you know the right one to make.
Exactly.
Right. Which
means the responsibility is forever on you, always.
Right.
But sometimes people do things that you need to address, and that it's normal to feel disappointed about, or to feel let down by, or to feel like you want to talk about it with them because your feelings got hurt.
Yes. So you're like, but I am offended.
Right.
Yes.
And so it would make you sort of question yourself every time you felt anything negative, or like if you were having a problem with, at least for me, if you're having a problem with someone else.
Yes.
It must be me because offense is a choice. Right. And I'm choosing.
And I'm the only one that seems to be having
and they
this
seem
problem.
Fine. And like, so it can just, you can see how it sets up a dynamic where like, you might never confront people about things or have hard conversations because you're like, it's on me and I just need to not be offended. Right.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So that's an example of like a thought ending cliche.
It's a good example because it's a bit like airy-fairy, you know? Like where,
it sounds great.
You're just kind of like,
sounds true.
Sure, but it's also like, well, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
but it is partly true, right?
Yes,
like there are times when you're probably like, I just need to get over myself. And this is my problem.
Yes.
But there are plenty of other times where it's not
like,
just
let's
your
actually
problem.
hash it out.
Like, and you need to have that interpersonal conflict because that's what builds relationships. It
really does. Totally.
And it also just works to help you sort of continually be self-surveilling. So you're like, is it me or and so and then it works in favor of just suppressing any negative emotions, really.
Yeah, cool.
Even when
it's a good example.
Negative emotions are not always bad.
Right.
In fact, sometimes they're good.
Always. What do they mean?
So that's under thought control, the language thing. There's a lot of focus on language.
Yes.
Because, I mean, thoughts are expressed in language, right? So part of thought control is very much to do with language and how a group talks and like what.
And how you can right away go like, oh, that person belongs based on how they're speaking, and oh, that person doesn't because those like in words aren't being used.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So one more from this list, because there's a lot in each list, but teaching thought-stopping techniques which shut down reality testing by stopping negative thoughts and allowing only positive thoughts, which is kind of what we were saying, including denial, rationalization, justification, wishful thinking, chanting, meditating, praying, speaking in tongues, singing or humming. Lots of things to get you away from thinking.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's under thought control. Then under emotional control, I'll pick a few. Manipulating and narrowing the range of feelings. Some emotions and or needs are deemed as evil, wrong, or selfish.
Right. That's funny. Okay, so just because anger is a tricky one for people.
It is.
And it's something that just I'll give from personal experience recently. There's been so much anger, right?
Yeah.
And it makes people feel, I think sometimes when they encounter someone who's angry, it makes them feel really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And yet
put off.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, this person's unhinged or what the heck.
Yeah.
And yet anger is such a valuable emotion because typically
it's information.
It's information, and typically it shows where your boundary has been crossed, where somebody has done something or you have done something or something like that where like an injustice has occurred and you're just trying to right an imbalance or something, right? And where most people are just like, whoa, shut that off instead of like process and figure out why it's there and all of that. And that curiosity piece, if you're just like cutting these things off all the time. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah. Anger is bad.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Just right away.
Yeah.
Nope.
Positivity is good.
Yes.
Teach emotion stopping techniques to block feelings of homesickness, anger, doubt.
There you go.
Yeah. Doubt was a big one for me. Yeah. Always deemed sort of not good.
Yeah. Like not the righteous, holy.
Yeah. It's not in line with what faith means, right?
Sure.
What it means to have faith.
Right. Even in the non-Christian context in our world today, like people want the positivity, right? Like
100%. Yeah. It's not just a Christian thing.
Yeah, no, which sometimes we get so like pigeonholed into that, like this topic of what like the church stuff. But no, a lot of people
just positivity.
Yeah. And I mean, capitalism's really like built on like this, like
prosperity.
Exactly.
Success.
Like you work harder and you just like, you manifest. And like don't entertain any bad feelings because they're just going to drag you down.
Yeah. Positive vibes only.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And that, anything outside of like the North American, like
dream.
Goodness, right? Is like the enemy and needs to be squashed. And,
right.
We need to protect ourselves from that.
Yeah. Anger is bad.
Anger's bad. Okay.
Emotional control. Yes. Emotions that get sort of divided up into like these are emotions are okay to have and in fact they signal something about you,
right?
And these ones are not, and they also signal something about you if you display them,
right? Okay.
Instilling fear, such as fear of thinking independently, the outside world, enemies, losing one's salvation, leaving or being shunned by the group, others' disapproval,
right?
Funny, lots of fear.
But belonging. So fear of like, that's a huge one because we know belonging is so important for like just humans in general.
Right.
But also what that makes me think of is like, what's the most effective thing? Being afraid of like hell and being afraid of like death and like all of that. Like that's such an effective tool for like, you better do right and good things or else you have the threat of eternal damnation.
100%.
Which, holy, you're going to get me to do a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Which like I grew up in a more sort of like prior to mega church involvement and stuff. Like the faith that I was born into was very fundamental, which I now sort of think of as extremism.
Sure.
But like, so it's on the more, I guess, perilous end of the spectrum,
right?
Because it does use a lot of fear. Like, I think it wasn't even hell for me, but it was more the demonic realm.
You're right,
like the spiritual realm for me.
Totally.
When I was a kid, because I heard a lot about that.
Well, don't let Satan get a foothold.
Right,
like don't even
demons
read
that roam around.
Yeah, the information thing about like don't read the wrong books, don't entertain the wrong music.
That could be a way you might get a demon in you.
Exactly. like how
like
wild
as a child,
right? That's the thing. Impressionable minds that have wild imaginations. And we're gonna like populate your imagination with demons,
and that's the thing.
Like a
so
great idea.
Our worlds are built on language, and so hearing stories constantly of like, casting demons out. And like, I mean, I even would get a bit, the chapters in the Bible that deal with that have always made me a little uncomfortable too, if I'm really honest about like, I don't really know what to do about these.
Well, you're basically like talking about the boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
And things that would be terrifying for us to confront like around the corner on a dark night.
Totally.
But that, again, we're adults. That doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
Yeah, but I grew up with adults telling stories of very real...
does happen.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, and I'm still a little unsure about this myself in terms of spiritual realm. Like, I do believe maybe there are paranormal experiences that people have. But I'm also very interested in just psychological phenomena and the way that we do create things with our minds.
Definitely.
And there is a lot of overlap, I think. And it's just crazy how powerful our brains are.
That's
with the way we can sort of conjure things into being because of what we're told and how we're conditioned with language. Like there is a lot of science behind that.
There is. And that's okay. So like, as we've referenced too, we care a lot about, again, why we're doing this podcast as two females. We care about our empirical data based on our experience in this world, right? And I don't think either of us have, for one, seen a demon.
Yeah.
Two, like when I think about, like I've literally had people pray for demons to come out of me, which was like quite the experience, right? Which again... I would have said, you know, feels a little bit like, oh, maybe they're sweeping some cobwebs out from my brain, but nothing happened to me. And when you're sort of like confronting and you're willing to sort of stand there and be like, yo, demon, show yourself. Yo, Satan, show yourself. And then you get to that friggin' end point of having kind of like no fear. Because again, there's like all these mental blocks that you can almost like conjure up the demon in your own brain.
Right.
Thinking like, oh no, if I actually look at it.
This is what it is.
Yes.
Your brain works with that. Too.
Totally. Yeah. And when you actually get to that end point and being the lowest of the low and having like, you know, dragged around the bottom of like whatever, like your own psyche, and kind of going like, well, if it's here, let's go for it. And then
why not?
You end up peering behind the veil and you're like, oh wait, that's not a thing. This was used to explain maybe some behaviors in other people and that they had no other language for it. I thought that actually, what's her I think it's Accidental Saints or Sinners or Accidental Saints. Anyways, the book that we've...
Nadia Bolz-Weber,
She has a really interesting way of talking through like that demonic realm and sort of going like, maybe this was the way that people were trying to explain mental health crisis before there was modern day science. And again, like that's maybe too easy of a way to kind of talk about that, but there is something there in the middle where I'm like, that seems to make more sense to me.
100%.
You can see when people like they've got like I would say even some thoughts I've had are like more evil thoughts, right? But at the same time, it's not based because Satan is like doing something. It's because our human nature sometimes make these things happen. And
we have impulses, we have thoughts.
And it's like, right, going down that path is not going to lead you anywhere good. But I don't think it's as fear-based as it needs to be, like the boogeyman and monster kind of vibes.
Well, the interesting thing for me in my experience was that I actually got to a point where I was just like, I don't believe any of that anymore. And I don't believe in hell.
Because it was used to manipulate. I think that's the main reason why not to believe.
Right. Yeah. But you also realize where it was talked about to the point where I just took it as reality because I was a kid. So like, yes, of course. Like, demons exist and they can possess you and you need to cast them out and Jesus overcomes demons. And to getting to a point where like, I remember just, I had so much fear as a kid, especially nighttime. I had trouble sleeping a lot and nightmares with that kind of imagery in them and stuff. Like, and when I finally reached that point of, in my older sort of young adult life, or even not until the last like 6 or 7 years maybe with deconstruction and everything, just being like, I don't believe in hell. And I remember when, as soon as I dropped that belief, I just got so much clarity. And I can honestly say none of those fears have affected me since.
I agree.
And I haven't, I don't know, been spooked by like ooh, demonic activity.
Right? Yeah.
I do think there is like, I will say that like there are certain energies.
That's what I was just going to say.
feel.
Energetically, yes.
Yes.
But that's again a different thing. It's like just the realities of a positive and negative like polarity in, right? Like in like the atomic, like the like how particles are distributed, right?
Yeah.
With the force fields and all that stuff.
Right.
Wow, I sound dumb, but
yeah,
like that's a real thing, right? And where that exists, where there is good, of course there will be bad, like that idea,
right? But sometimes I also wonder if it's like chicken before the egg thing, because I feel a lot of people who subscribe to that kind of ideology also exude a certain like intensity that is because of what they believe.
Interesting.
Whereas like and you can get that in the secular world too, with just like
for sure,
a lot of, you know, in the new agey sort of circles with like positive and bad energy and all that. And yes, there's certain vibes that I get around certain people, but I think seeing it as like demonic activity maybe can be one way of seeing it, and it's just a way of seeing it that I'm no longer like,
it's not
doesn't
necessarily
work for me anymore.
It's not like the gospel truth anymore, right? It's maybe another label for something that is maybe a universal thing,
right?
But it's no longer the thing you prescribe to.
So I think a lot of this conversation is like with cult things, and just even like we've been taught to see something one way,
right? And
realizing there are many ways to see things, like whether it's like, you could see demonic activity through a spiritual lens and call it that, or you could look at it through a like psychoanalysis lens, or through a therapy lens, or through scientific lens, and there's a lot of explanations. And it's just like, which one makes sense to me and kind of lines up with my experience the most. And I think that's been I think that's why I'm so curious to like constantly learn, is because there's many explanations for the things we experience as humans, and just having one,
the most simplistic answer isn't always the fullest,
isn't always gonna be maybe best.
Okay, so yes, you just brought us through the BITE of each of sort of how you
control,
which would be in essence like, is this a cult? Answering that question.
There's a lot of those things at play.
Yes. Then by using, the BITE model, kind of reading through that, go like, okay, wait, if I'm in a situation, are these things happening?
Yeah.
And then I think that's also interesting is who is kind of like most, I guess, susceptible to joining a cult, or to being led into some sort of like authoritative relationship.
Dynamic.
Totally.
One thing I was going to say too is with that BITE model, like a lot of those are the extreme end, and they're not always visible or like overt, you know, because the thing is, they do often come with after like you've bought into something, or after a relationship has developed a bit, and then these things start taking place. It's not like, if it were that easy, I think people would avoid situations a lot more
and funny
quickly.
enough, like the best intentions, like that's something that we will reference more, is like the best intentions, what do they say, are like a road paved to hell kind of idea.
Oh yeah, that's one of those little saying things.
And just because like somebody maybe is a very charismatic leader, and then they start to like notice like, oh, not a lot of people are checking them, and they just end up like, this just keeps happening to the leader, where they're pedestaled more and more. And so I think even those can start super benign, like where, this dynamic is sort of happening, and then it just suddenly continues to unfold. So it's almost like that can just end up breeding, because that just is the dynamic in the group by accident, right? Not necessarily that it was this intentional person. And I think where it gets really bad is when people understand that there is a model, and therefore have gone into specifically
they can leverage it.
Exactly. Where they're like, oh, this is really effective.
100%.
And I think that's where I think you can still have the same end result, whether the intentions are good or bad. But that there is this, I think that's something we also talk about is pathology. Like given a starting point and going like, oh, what is going to grow based on this soil that, or what is being
the framework that's already there now.
Right. Yeah. This is what's destined to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess because cults always have typically been around something supernatural.
Right.
Like I think, yes, on the one hand, people often demonize religions because, and by calling them cults, and we all like to sort of feel, she points that out in the book, Montell, like we all love to feel sort of morally superior.
Yes,
and
we do.
by just labeling a whole group of people like brainwashed cult followers, that is a quick burst of like that feeling of like, we're better, like
what does that do for us?
We didn't fall for that.
It gives us a sense of like safety, that we're like, oh, we're not that dumb.
Totally. Like, but I think I can say as someone who was that dumb, and not dumb, but I just want to, I think it's more complicated than that. And I think maybe one of the reasons cults have typically revolved around spirituality is because, I mean, this might be, people can take this whatever way you want it, but like I feel like the Bible and what is in the Bible actually like lends itself really well to a cult dynamic. With the model of leader, follower. I mean, that started with Jesus, right? And like, you follow and you listen to the leader and what they say.
And funny enough,
you submit, I think and you trust.
The pushback that I have there is like, I don't think that it was ever, like, I don't think that's what he was trying to say, at least with maybe some of the more expansive thoughts that people have that I've listened to recently, where he was like, no, the kingdom of heaven like resides within you, resides within each person, and kind of trying to squash hierarchy and like, oppressive power and all of that. Like, I think that's what Jesus's true ministry was.
Totally.
And that is not at all what has been perpetuated over the centuries or millennia or whatever. And that's the interesting thing. When people saw that they could leverage this story for power, for influence, for monetary gain.
The model of it.
Right? Like, that's where I'm like, we need, like, any Jesus followers out there, I think it's worth questioning that piece, because I think when access is restricted, like, again, a lot of churches would say like, you have direct access to Jesus, he can be your best friend, God is within you at all times, and yet you can lose your salvation. You can, you have to people please to a God that's outside yourself. You have to,
or if you're not doing these things, then you're not really a true Christian.
You have to show up at Sunday on Sunday. You have to give of your time. You have to give of your money. Like, those are little things to go like, wait a second, right? Like, wait a second. And I think you've said, what's the cult, like, this plus this equals this. So
there's a joke in religious studies, and Reza Aslan, who's a famous scholar, religion professor, I think. He's famous for saying that cult plus time equals religion. But this brings us back to what you were just saying, is like, that's the slow distortion, of something. That's how that happens, with like, we start with this one thing and we slowly put our twists on it until it's something else entirely. And you're like, how the fuck should we end up here?
Wait a second. And how am I subscribing to this?
Because it starts with good things. And that also ties into the fact that not all cults are bad and not all alternative groups are bad. Like, if you think of just empire, for instance, and how there's often been resistance to that, which one could argue is a ruling power that sometimes, and especially in Jesus' day, was very oppressive. Like, Jews were not, they were pretty low on the spectrum of who was in power. And, but also within Judaism, there was a lot of oppressive religiosity for just everyday people. To have access to God, you had to make the certain sacrifices every, follow all the religious rules that are laid out in like Leviticus and Numbers, and that is a heavy burden. Like, that is a lot of boxes to tick.
Which is why a lot of people were like, yes, this is why Jesus came, squash it all. And
Jesus did. He came and was like, actually, what if you could just access God wherever? And like, I often used to think, as a devout sort of, evangelical, like how radical Jesus was and whether I would actually I would take him if I came across him in the modern, because he made some really bold claims, and people don't always love that when someone's as brazen as like, I am the way.
Yes, right.
You can see why that and cult leader, there's a lot of similarities.
There are. And yet again, like from just hearing how that we should have taken that, is that the I am the way is actually not what he was saying. He was like, each of us are the way. Right. And that's the bit where it's, again, worth us figuring. And like, if somebody's coming at you as a leader and going like, it's through me that you will find healing. It's through me that you will find wholeness. It's through me, financial gain, whatever those things are, that is the fantasy of what we want. I mean, this is capitalism as well. Like, through this method, you will have all your dreams like fulfilled. It's like, we should question that, because it's giving you a false, I mean, that's not reality. That's not how this is going to play out long term.
But I think these things work because
they play out in the short term too.
Yeah. Yes. And we all sort of we are all inclined that way, right? To
we want our dreams like
right.
We want it all to be okay.
We want it to be a fairy tale. Like, and so, there's a lot of stuff at play that people can manipulate in the human
and that's
condition.
I think, like when thinking about like the susceptible or at risk, or as I just, was rude and said, the dummies that could get into a cult.
Yeah.
Like, and then quickly.
It's not that simple.
Exactly. And a lot of people have so much shame around, right? Like, if they have been led into these things like survivor.
Survivor
shame.
Guilt or shame. And unfortunately, because of that kind of attitude too, where it's a bit pejorative and like you were dumb enough to get involved. The victim shaming, which doesn't help anyone who was, and seeing that cults are not just religious. Like this dynamic of wanting to control people happens everywhere.
Totally. So like what would be some of those things that...
So what makes you susceptible? I thought one thing that really stuck out to me from this book about that, on that note, was this. Let me just get to it here. I'm just going to read right from the book. So Stephen Hassan was in the Moonies, which was a famous cult.
That's right.
And so she is talking about another person here who was also in the Moonies. Quote, Aileen Barker's studies of the Moonies suggested that their most obedient members were intelligent, chin-up folks. They were the children of activists, educators, and public servants.
Right.
They were raised to see the good in people, even to their own detriment.
Right.
In this way, it's not desperation or mental illness that consistently suckers people into exploitative groups. Instead, it's an overabundance of optimism. It's not untrue that cultish environments can appeal to individuals facing emotional turmoil. Love bombing will feel especially good to those weathering stressful life transitions. But the attraction is often more complex than ego or desperation, having more to do with the person's stake in the promises they were originally told.
Right.
So it's complex.
Very, yes.
Because there are a lot of things at play, I think. And if I think of my own experience, why I was drawn to Hillsong, and by mentioning Hillsong's name like in this podcast, I am not claiming that Hillsong is a cult, because I don't believe it's that cut and dry. But I do think a lot of what I experienced makes sense on this continuum of Stephen Hassan's, of like it's a spectrum.
Yes.
And my initial experience was it was good and it was great. And I think in terms of being susceptible, I came from a very fundamental background with, like we've already discussed, a lot of fear.
Yes.
And the environment at Hillsong was the opposite of that.
Right.
It was all positive.
Right.
Brian is very charismatic. He's very good at painting a future for people.
A vision
that is filled with like success, prosperity, and like they were successful
God's
as a
blessings.
Church. The Hillsong worship brand was like known. And so you see that and you're like, oh, maybe I can, I would never have admitted this at the time, but maybe I can have a piece of that too, or maybe I can at least be in this.
I feel like, but you were like, that's sort of the cell that is like what they're promising, be a part of this and have that same, you should
100%.
expect it actually.
Yeah.
Right? Like the expectation language, we are going to believe this to be true in our own lives.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a personal stake,
yes.
a personal relevance, right? Of like, oh, I don't want to be like, this is the kind of Christianity that's appealing to me because I've just come from one where it's like all fear.
Well, fear.
And this is like, this is not that. This is like, let's focus on the positive and let's not be weird.
Well, and funny enough, like not only do you talk about your, the dynamic at home of fear, but you also came from a dynamic of more chaotic behavior, like
intense,
possible, like
a lot of intense behavior,
fracturing and all of that stuff too. And to go to a space that feels like organized and like safe.
I needed structure and like certainty at that point.
Totally right. And even that, like, I think that's just an interesting concept around like the vulnerabilities that we have that we're unaware of.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
And I also think, which my view on sort of like younger people and how we teach and coach and engage with younger people has changed so much in the last 10 years, because I do think it is, in terms of like susceptibility, it's a very vulnerable time because you're figuring out
1,000%
who you are. Anyone who's toting like charisma and confidence. I mean, you just think of like how obsessed with celebrities we are, who sort of as part of their job description have to portray a confidence that a lot of younger people don't have.
No, totally. And they're being told that they
yet.
And they should have it.
Right.
Because,
and like I was that. I had no self-confidence when I came to Hillsong at first, and I had no sense of like even sort of just who I was outside of my beliefs.
Right.
My beliefs were the thing that had been drilled into me. And so I was like, well, this lines up with that, but it's more appealing.
Yes.
And that makes me feel good.
Yes, exactly. This isn't so jarring for my nervous system.
Right.
Yeah.
And the creative team, being a person who loved to sing and write songs, like for me, that was the big draw.
Yes.
Like, this has something that really appeals to me, and I feel like I could actually use my musical gifts or whatever now
1,000%.
for like God. Which what more would I want?
No,
I mean,
and
to be able to honor God with my gifts.
Well, and I think we've referenced too that when you're in it and it's good, it is good like no other, right? Like often I think we reflect back on some of like the best times, and it's like I'm not sure that we've experienced those same highs outside of that. And that's when you're fully this sounds harsh, but when you're fully participating in the delusion, where you're getting none of the negativity and none of the reality, it feels really good.
It does.
It does. And it's like, again, that's probably another reason why it's hard.
You stay.
Yeah. And it's hard to even see that this might not be the actual full truth of what is going on. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so over time, I think the thing that became evident was that a few select people kind of got to achieve the promises that sort of everyone is promised. Yeah. But only, and everyone else sort of just carries the weight of like the unglamorous stuff.
Totally. With the hope that it will happen to you one day.
And that's why you stay, and also loyalty, it's drummed into you. And then also over time as well, being like, certain people's lives getting better and better, and a lot of people's not. Right. Like you're still struggling financially. You're, raising families now. Yes. And just meanwhile, your time is being monopolized and your energy's being drained, and you have nothing
your resources,
for your family.
Not only energy but financially. Like it's a huge strain,
and that starts to take a toll.
It does,
and there's some disillusionment there, and then. Yeah, and then it did come out that there was not transparency where we had always thought there was.
Well, and there was scandal around like abuse, and there's a lot of stuff.
So that omission stuff and like outright lies like that coming to light is just devastating, because it's an abuse of trust, right?
And I think for some people it doesn't matter, or they would say, well, it's the work of the enemy that got in there. And it's like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Because it does actually matter. That this is what this system either has allowed to happen or perpetuated or whatever. Like, that actually matters. It's at the core of what you would have spent time and money and belief in. Like, you are complicit in that. Right. Like, that is actually true.
Yeah. And I led the way I was, I saw modeled and I was taught to lead, and I would have perpetuated things that I afterward was like,
oh, right.
I hate that I did that. I hate that I was that way, that I made certain people feel like less than, or was taking advantage of certain people.
Totally.
And I think my own advancement, like,
and that's the choice to go, like, will I keep doing this? Because I think for some people, they might start to see some of these things. And again, like, not that we're saying you have to do something about it if you see anything, but it's like, do you double down? Like, if this actually is a harmful thing that you're participating in, do you put your head deeper into the sand and go, it's fine, it'll all be fine, I'm just gonna keep believing and trusting more, and like that doubling down
but the
aspect.
good we're doing.
Exactly. Right. And
there's
that
many
should
ways
negate
you can justify.
there's a million things, right? And especially when you have belonging at risk, when you have esteem and, like, a certain level of influence that you will not have anymore, that you're going to have to, like, step down from the platform that you have been given or whatever. Like, that doesn't feel good. But possibly that might be the right thing to do. And of course, that's going to be very difficult. Like, I've lived that, and it sucks.
It does.
But it's, and like, at least in my life, I could say that that's the right thing to do for me, was to go, like, wait a second, there is harm going on here, and I actually have to not be a part of it anymore.
100%. Yeah. For us, it was like, started with, well, this is just kind of too much. We can't keep giving this amount of time and energy to this now that we have a child, and we've just lost another child. And then it became COVID, actually. Right. COVID, like, literally shut down churches. Yes. So I think for not just us, like, there was a lot of people that sort of had a bit of a reckoning in the COVID time, like, with in just the COVID, not going, you know?
But maybe they didn't go, and maybe that helped, like, the time, like, your time isn't just, like, focused, which I think you and Grant had, like, spoken about that. Yeah. But for a lot, like, for me in COVID, that would have been the doubling down for me, where I'm like, oh, we all can't meet. Well, I got to figure out a million different ways for us to still make this possible.
Do it online. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's where
we did that too.
Sure. But at the same time, I think, like, in these episodes, we want to really honor that, like, when the vibes are off, like, when that something is amiss, your gut is, like, blaring at you, like, oh my goodness, I can't keep going on. I can't exactly tell you why. I might not have the bite model in front of me. I might not have all this research and whatever else to back up why I don't feel safe and right and good. Right. But those vibes are so important to listen to. And I think that's the really admirable thing that you guys did, where you were like, I can't tell you why, and I'm going to risk other people thinking a certain way, maybe possibly calling me a bad person, or saying that I've lost my faith or fallen away, or whatever else. Risk my community, my belonging, all of that. And just, you got out and you were able to find that grounding again, which, without having all of this research, right, which I think is so huge. And I think that's really what we want to continue to advocate for, is, like, that matters, that initial
it does
thought
matter,
because your understanding will come later, but it's there's something there
is. And I think that even acknowledgement to ourselves of just, like, I can't do this, can sometimes feel like weak, you know?
Oh, it's like giving up. Well, we're being told, like, that's that's not a desirable thing. But
like, we like to remind people on bad people, those seemingly negative admissions or realizations are not always bad. They're actually sometimes, like, the best thing to listen to. Yes. But I will say that, yes, that did come with, like, a huge cost. And even yesterday was still felt grief a bit, like, as I message you, like, like, it's not, I think the grief will always come and go of, like, what we used to be part of and are now not. and also like a lot of mental health ups and downs since then, which it didn't get easier mental health wise, but I can say that I now feel a bit more like on the other side of that and I do feel the most free like I've ever felt in my life. And by free, I mean like free to just be.
Yeah,
to
totally.
be a human.
Which funny.
To feel the feelings.
Yeah, well, and that's like, again, maybe one of the most beautiful parts of, let's say, Christianity is like this idea that you are fully loved and fully accepted as you are. 100%. And I'm not sure that that's ever.
That message is necessary.
It's so necessary. And I feel like it's so loud and that God is love. But I personally did not see that actually getting worked out. It was like, you need to do more, be involved more, make sure that other people know about Jesus, make sure that, you know, you sacrifice yourself and, you know, confess your sins and change these things and 180 and the whole thing. Yeah. There's so much effort. Very
performative.
Yeah. Instead of just going like, this is just who I am and where I'm at. And I don't think I can do anything about it. Yeah. Because I am exhausted. Yeah. And I think that's, like when I think of Jesus, like he allowed for that. He allowed for people to just gather as they were, come as you are around the table and eat together, be together. Totally. Yeah. And be reminded that God exists within them. Yeah. And I think those are the things that we still go like, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. And I think we both say that that probably is what we kind of believe in, like just to exist. Yeah. Yeah. Without having to do.
Totally. Yeah. I think there was a lot of reading like perspectives and books on the historical Jesus for me that actually I couldn't read the Bible for quite a few years after. And still don't read it daily, but I now like I think there's a scriptures still do come to my mind and I think about them at times. But I think learning about the historical Jesus actually gave me a whole fresh respect for who he was outside of the theology and everything I'd been sort of taught for so long and who I'd conjured in my mind that Jesus was.
That's actually, you know, as we're going to end here pretty quick, but I'm thinking about something you said when it came to this topic, which was maybe you want to talk about like the self-reflective aspect again of why we care to call ourselves bad people is that we are capable of anything. And in this topic, you had said what did you say? Right. You're like,
well, I said that I could be a cult leader.
Yeah. And I just think that that's so helpful because not only do you recognize that each one of us has a propensity to do harm or whatever, but I think it's also the relational dynamic that maybe you have some charisma as well and you have a way that you can speak publicly and knowing that people could platform you, right? Yes. And so on my end to go, right, am I platforming somebody to create that dynamic, right? Yes. And also, are we aware that we could also lean into that too hard,
100%.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's so why I say I could be a cult leader is because I think we all have this sort of propensity to like how we see things is the way everybody else should see it. Right. And that I think is such a subtle thing that can slowly just seep into everything. Like, yes, whether it's your faith, but now for me, sort of a red flag for myself, if I'm feeling too like
amped up,
frenetic, or just like everyone else needs to like get this idea too. Yes. Yeah. Like that for me now is just a minute to be like, okay, step down a little bit.
Take ourselves off the ledge.
Like don't take yourself too seriously. Yes. You're not God.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know better than someone else about their own life.
But that's not something that just like goes away. Right. I think you sort of have to constantly be in conversation with yourself that way. Yes. But also I think why cults are complex is because they are not just a leader brainwashing a whole bunch of people and then somehow those people are like robots that do what it is a like symbiotic thing.
Sure is. You're getting something from it in return. Yeah.
Like I for many years had Brian and Bobby on a pedestal partly because of the way they positioned themselves. Definitely. And we bought into that hierarchy. Yep. And also because of their like confidence. Yeah. And now for me, I have definitely become a skeptic, much to my sometimes own dislike of like, oh, why am I so like mistrustful?
Sure.
But I've learned to be gentle with that because I think I feel better being on that side than being like too trusting.
Yes.
And that's just, unfortunately, that's because I for so long was like that.
It's maybe a writing
trust.
of the pendulum swing.
The swing. Yeah. And so coming back to a middle ground of like, no, I can trust people, but I also am not just going to take people at their word all the time.
Yes.
And also, if someone, I do believe that anyone can sell you anything as long as they're confident.
Yeah. Some good marketing, man. I'm very well versed in that. Yeah.
Whether you know what you're talking about or not.
Yes.
If you are confident and you have a good handle on language. So I think this is weird because this is where I'm going to flip it and be like, we always had that verse told to us. Like, I'm not even sure it's a verse, but it's a Christianism of like, to whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah. I mean, it's based in scripture. Yes. Yeah.
But there's wisdom. Like, I think the more I know about psychology and like learning how the brain works and how people work and susceptibilities and vulnerabilities, like I think with that comes an even greater responsibility to, treat people with respect and the autonomy that they possess and to not manipulate. But it's not something I'm like immune to. Like,
that's the thing. You have to be very aware of your darkness, your shadows, your propensity. Like, let's say you have a lot of anxiety, let's say, and control feels really good because then you can dampen your own like insecurity kind of and going like, oh God, this world is so scary. And so knowing
control
that
feels good.
And then knowing that about yourself will help you. Like, for one, nobody really wants to admit that they're controlling because that's like a bad quality. But that is what we are here. But we all
have a little bit of that in us.
Right. And that's what we are here in this work that we're trying to do, is to go like, we all have that shadow side, the darkness, the bad shit that we are trying to just like turn the volume down a little on, right? And to go like, where are we blind to our own harmful behavior?
Right.
And I think that's why we value like honest and open communication and community and places that aren't just policing behavior, but are really getting into the like, are you friends with this shadow side enough to embrace it and see it like this childlike coping mechanism for whatever was going on that felt chaotic in your world, and to go, right, you might always lean to that bad side and the blind side that you don't want to look at it because you then would have to confront your own shittiness. But then to just be like, okay, like I could see how that off the rails, it could go really sideways.
It can go wrong. And so now I think I tend to mistrust people who make big claims or who claim to have overcome something fully.
Yes.
And I'm like,
maybe for now. But and that's the thing. For
maybe
now,
momentarily.
That could be very true for them in the here and now. Like, but then long term, which I think is why we continue to speak up, is like, we just based on some life circumstances have seen, maybe not to say that we're better or we have special insight again, but that we've maybe we've played this game a little bit to more of an extreme because maybe we were in it a little bit too much. And to go like, oh, I think that there's like, it's worth kind of cautioning people, right?
Yeah. And I'm not by saying that they've overcome something. I 100% believe in growth. Like, I think we do grow. And even I would say I'm way more confident than I ever used to be and more like at home in myself. And that's growth to me and like confidence. But
that happened in a very specific way to you. And you can't actually replicate that for anybody else, I think. You could offer wisdom and advice, but we're not here to go like, follow us and our specific path.
Or just, things like how to overcome insecurity and kick it like once and for all in the butt. Like,
here's that special pill.
Either that I get wary of and people who just seem to have an urgency and a drive for everyone else to sort of adopt their ideology or their perspective. That to me is a bit of a red flag. Of like, but why? And what would you do if everyone did start being, I don't know. Those are just little red flags that I now sort of look out for.
And I think that we on the back end, our own conversations around the work that we're trying to do here is like a tension that we both really want to hold and try and just manage in ourselves. Because
our baddie sides and our goodie sides.
Exactly. Just because we happen to have gone a certain direction does not mean we discount and devalue groups that are still functioning in a whole and healthy way. Like, that's amazing. And we have dear friends that participate in things that we have had to leave, and that does not make us better or them better or whatever. It's just, we're happy to have conversations around things that some other people are not having the same conversations.
Right.
So that's sort of the point. But anyways, any closing thoughts on cults, and then we'll wrap this up?
I was just going to say a little bit about some of the stuff that's out there to watch right now, because I think I just recently watched a doco called Trust Me, the False Prophet. I don't know, for all of the culty nerds out there. There was also initial documentary with the same focus, which was the Keep, Sweet, Pray and Obey. The story of just like the FLDS sect. But the second installment of it is a different sort of documentary, and it's the main lady or therapist in this is actually very good friends with Stephen Hassan, so they've known each other for a long time. Anyway, she it's probably the most compassionate look I've ever come across of how, like, of trying to help people in maybe those more extreme cults without like the judgment and the like
lovely the shame that would happen,
just shitting on their way of life and why they believe what they believe. But I'm more like coming to this point of helping them until they have their own realization. But also getting justice for some pretty horrible things that went on. So I don't know. I feel like if you haven't seen that, that's a good one to check out. They make some interesting like identity choices in it, but I think that's a really great one to start with when you think of cults and people who believe certain things that you're like, why do they believe that? I would never, like, why? That is so deluded. It just gives you a look into like how powerful belief is and how we all sort of have that in our own sense, but judging people for their beliefs isn't really
helpful.
The step to
and funny enough, like Amanda, she co-hosts a podcast called what's it called again?
Sounds Like a Cult,
which I like.
Fun.
As we were, it's so fun, and as we were saying, like, again, the shame around, you know, certain beliefs or whatever, like, that's not the vibe. The vibe is like, especially Amanda would argue that everything is a cult, which we've kind of gone over, and she
just whether it's good or bad,
and she uses
on the spectrum.
Sort of like a three, like is this cult a get the fuck out, I
think it's a like live your life, so in other words it's
fine, don't worry about it,
a watch your back,
that's right,
or a get the fuck out,
which is just interesting because just because you might identify some aspects of the group that you're in, maybe based on the bite model, is you're like, oh, there's some things like just
or your gut reaction.
Just use that as information to go, well, I'm not going to be like the extreme believer in this. And I see how this possibly could go down the path of like being problematic, but I'm just going to stay right in the middle, benefit from the things that I like about this group, and just kind of like watch your back until it kind of, if it gets weird, then get the fuck out.
But I think again, caution is always good.
It's just because there might be some aspects of it, like, if anything, we believe deeply in the fact that you can change things based on your behavior and how you engage with things. So even taking folks off a pedestal that you might have previously kind of thought of them in a certain type of way, that's powerful.
That can be huge, even if it's just internally, and no one ever knows anything about it.
Totally,
that's a big step.
It is,
And so Sounds Like a Cult is a bit more like tongue in cheek. They have a bit more fun with sort of the culty vibes, but I like it because it's just it's a great awareness to have that, like, actually, no, this kind of affects all of us. This kind
and
of
if you've
stuff.
ever sort of wondered, I think they cover like kind of anything that you're like, oh, is that a cult? They would cover that specific, like whether it's organization or whatnot.
Right. And actually, thanks to a lovely friend, I actually got to go to the live show.
That's right.
That was so fun.
What a good, she's a good friend.
The other podcast that has helped me and that's had a few good episodes that both of us have listened to, I sent you one, I think. The one they did with Nadia Bolz-Weber is A Little Bit Culty. And that one is Sarah and Nippy Ames, I think. They were in Nexium, which is another kind of big cult out there. And they started a pod to sort of talk about like red flags and it's good. They have a lot of amazing guests on there, and they have a lot of great stuff to share.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks again, you guys, for listening. And we, obviously always appreciate your feedback, any thoughts.
Yeah, if you've had any experiences like that you want to share.
Totally. We'd love to hear from you guys. And again, we will be tackling another 5 topics and can't wait for you guys to tune in. And if there's anything else that you want us to cover, shoot us a DM.
Yes.
Awesome.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks again. Chat soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.